You remember the day our world burned. You remember the sky turning a sick shade of orange. It was not the color of a sunset. It was the color of a furnace. We had watched the stars for generations. We had named them and charted them. We never thought they would fall on us. But they did. Their ships did not scream into the atmosphere. They simply arrived. Vast, silent things of gold and obsidian. They blotted out the sun one by one. There was no declaration of war, no list of demands. There was only a shadow, and then a searing light. Our cities became glass. Our oceans boiled. You were a child then, hiding in a storm cellar with your family. You felt the world shake with each impact. The ground trembled as if in a fever. The air itself grew hot and tasted of metal. You held your mother's hand. Her knuckles were white. Her face was a mask of disbelief. We were a proud people. We had built wonders. We thought ourselves safe in our little corner of the galaxy. That pride turned to dust. The invaders, we later learned to call them the Gilded, were methodical. They were not angry. They were not hateful. They were exterminators. They moved from continent to continent. They left nothing standing. They wanted the planet. They did not want its people. The bombardments lasted for 3 days. On the 4th day, there was silence. A terrible, deep quiet that was worse than the explosions. You emerged from the cellar into a new world. A world of gray ash and twisted metal. The sky was a permanent twilight, thick with the memory of everything we had lost. The ash fell like a constant, gentle snow. It covered the bodies of the dead. It coated the ruins of our lives. They left us nothing but embers. We were orphans on a dead world, and the Gilded began to build their own cities upon our graves. Our history was over, or so we thought. Years passed under that gray sky. The ash settled. The Gilded consolidated their hold. We, the survivors, learned to be quiet. We learned to be invisible. We became ghosts in our own home. Our world was now a graveyard of 2 civilizations, ours and theirs. Their crashed ships were our new mountains, colossal wrecks that scarred the landscape. These mountains of star wreckage became our refuge, our hunting grounds, our only hope. We lived by picking through their garbage. We learned their technology by taking it apart. Their broken machines were our greatest treasures. A discarded power cell could light a settlement for a week. A cracked data slate held more knowledge than our old libraries. It was a strange and bitter irony. We were being sustained by the very tools that had destroyed us. We were rats in the walls of their new empire. Your life was measured in cycles of risk. You would venture out from the hidden burrows. You would creep into the skeletons of their fallen cruisers. The Gilded patrols were a constant threat. Their drones hummed through the ruins like metallic insects. To be seen was to die. So you learned the paths of the wind. You learned to walk without a sound. You learned to read the silence for danger. You were part of a small crew. There was Kale, the old soldier. His eyes held the memory of the world before the fire. He was cautious. He was our anchor. Then there was Ilara, a girl born in the wreckage. She knew nothing but this life. Her fingers could dance across alien circuitry. She could coax life from machines that should be dead. And there was you. You were the scout, the one who went first, the one who balanced risk and reward. We found humor in the dark. We had to. Kyle once remarked that a Gilded nutrient paste dispenser was a better cook than his mother-in-law. Ilara claimed their trash cans had better processing power than our old city grids. She was probably right. Laughter was a small act of defiance. a flicker of warmth in the endless cold. It was our way of saying we were still here. Most of our finds were simple: power packs, filtration units, medical supplies, the things that kept our small enclave of a few hundred souls alive. We never looked for weapons. The thought was insane. To fight the Gilded would be like throwing stones at a hurricane. We were survivors, not rebels. Survival was a full-time job. It left no room for dreams of revenge. Or so you believed until that day. The day you decided to go deeper than ever before. The target was the Leviathan, a Gilded supercarrier that had snapped in half during the invasion. It lay in the Valley of Glass, a place most scavengers avoided. It was too deep in patrolled territory. Kyle argued against it. He said the risk was too great. The reward was not worth our lives. But your gut told you otherwise. You felt a pull toward that place, a whisper in the back of your mind. Alara, ever curious, backed your play. She wanted to see the core systems of a ship that large. With a heavy sigh, Kyle agreed. But his eyes never lost their worry. We moved at dusk. 3 small figures against a backdrop of ruin. The carrier was immense. Its broken hull reached for the ash-filled sky like a skeletal hand. Getting inside was the easy part. The challenge was navigating the maze within. The corridors were tilted at crazy angles. Gravity plates flickered on and off without warning. It was a death trap, but it was also pristine, untouched. No other scavengers had dared to come this far. We found a trove of medical supplies, advanced synthesizers and diagnostic tools, enough to keep our people healthy for a generation. Kale was satisfied. He said it was time to leave. We had pushed our luck far enough. But you still felt that pull, a nagging insistence that there was something more. You saw a service conduit that led down, deeper into the ship's belly, toward the command sections. You told Kale and Alara to start hauling the supplies back. You would do one last sweep. Kale protested. He said splitting up was a fool's move. But you were insistent. You promised to be quick. Reluctantly, he agreed. He gave you a look that said, "Do not die." You nodded and descended into the darkness. The conduit was tight. It hummed with a low, residual energy. It felt like you were crawling through the artery of a dead god. The passage opened into a place of profound silence. The command bridge, or what was left of it. The view screen was shattered. It showed a frozen, nightmarish image of the invasion from the Gilded perspective. Consoles were dark. The air was still. It felt like a tomb. For a moment, you thought Kyle was right. There was nothing here but ghosts and regret. Then you saw it. A single light. A small, pulsing blue light on an auxiliary console. It was tucked away in a recessed alcove, almost as if it was designed to be overlooked. Your heart began to beat faster. It was illogical. It was just a light. But you knew. This was what had been calling to you. You approached the console slowly. Your scavenged interface tool felt clumsy in your hands. You plugged it in. The console flickered to life. It was not a primary system. It was a maintenance log, a diagnostic archive. Most of it was corrupted data, digital gibberish. You almost gave up. But you kept scrolling through the files. Your fingers were numb from the cold. And then you found it. A file that was not corrupted. It was flagged for deletion. But the deletion had failed. An error in the ship's death throes had preserved it. The file was small. It was a report from a Gilded engineer, a report on a flaw in their most fundamental technology. It was a signal in the silence. A secret the enemy thought was buried forever. In that moment, kneeling in the dark heart of their dead warship, you felt a new emotion, something that had been extinguished the day the sky burned. It was hope, a terrible, dangerous hope. You brought the data slate back to the burrow. Your hands did not shake. Your face was a mask of calm. But inside, a storm was raging. You showed the file to Kale and Alara. Kale was suspicious. He saw it as a trap, a gilded trick to lure out dissidents. He argued that it was too good to be true. He warned that this path would lead to our destruction, not our salvation. Alara was different. Her eyes lit up with a fire you had never seen before. She did not see a trap. She saw a puzzle, a challenge. She took the slate from your hands, gently, as if it were a sacred text. For 2 days, she and you locked yourselves away. We worked in her makeshift lab, surrounded by humming capacitors and tangled wires. We barely ate. We barely slept. The fate of our people was contained in that single, tiny file. Alara was brilliant. She translated the gilded mathematics into concepts we could understand. She built simulations on her scavenged consoles. The gilded engineer's report was dense, but the core idea was terrifyingly simple. Their greatest strength, the thing that made them seem like gods, was a network, a star-born web that connected every ship, every drone, every soldier. They did not communicate with radio signals. They shared thoughts instantly through this network. A single, unified consciousness in battle. Perfect coordination. Perfect efficiency. This was how they had defeated us so easily. Our fleets were a collection of individuals. Theirs was a single organism. But the engineer had found a flaw, a terrifying vulnerability in the heart of their design. The network relied on a series of nodes to function, and like any network, it had a master frequency, a single resonant vibration that kept the entire system in harmony. The engineer had discovered that this frequency could be weaponized. If you could broadcast a precise energy pulse, a counter-frequency, the network would not just fail. It would cascade into a catastrophic feedback loop. The perfect harmony would become perfect chaos. Every gilded ship and soldier would be hit with a wave of digital screaming. They would be deafened, blinded, paralyzed. Their own minds turned into a weapon against them. It would not last long, perhaps only for a few seconds, maybe a minute if we were lucky. But in that window of time, they would be helpless. They would be mortal. The gods would fall from their golden thrones. They would be as vulnerable as we were on the day the sky burned. Kale watched our progress with a grim expression. He saw the simulations. He saw the proof in Alara's equations. His arguments grew weaker. His skepticism was being eroded by the undeniable truth. You realized why the report was buried. The Gilded were arrogant. They could not accept that their perfect design was flawed. They probably silenced the engineer who found it. It was easier than admitting a weakness. It seems that bad management is a universal constant. A flaw in every empire. This knowledge was a heavy burden. It changed everything. We were no longer just scavengers. We were keepers of a secret that could change the galaxy. The enemy was not a god after all, and we had just learned how to make him bleed. The truth was a fire in your hands. You could not stay in the burrow. You could not go back to a life of simply surviving. That option was gone forever. The knowledge of the flaw demanded action. It was a call to arms written in the language of physics. You had to share it. You had to unite what was left of our people. Cairo was the first to be convinced. The old soldier finally saw the path forward. He saw not a suicide mission, but a chance. A single, desperate chance. He pledged his loyalty to you. Not as a scavenger, but as a leader. Alara was already with you. Her mind was already designing the weapon, the device that would broadcast the counter-frequency. The hard part was not the science. The hard part was the people. You left your home burrow. You left the familiar comfort of your small community. Your mission was to walk the shattered face of your world, to find the scattered children of humanity, and to give them a reason to fight. It was a journey into a new kind of wilderness, not of nature, but of broken spirits. The settlements were few and far between, hidden in deep canyons, in abandoned subway tunnels, in the hollowed-out shells of our old factories. Each one was an island of paranoia. They had survived by trusting no one. And now you, a stranger, were coming to them with an impossible story. A story of hope. Trust was a currency we no longer had. You had to earn it from scratch. The first settlement you found was in an old mine shaft. They were grim-faced and gaunt. Their leader was a woman named Anya. She listened to your story with cold, dead eyes. She told you hope was a poison. It had killed more people than the Gilded. She sent you away. It was a bitter first taste of the challenge ahead. You walked for weeks. You faced dust storms and malfunctioning Gilded drones. You ate nutrient paste that tasted like chalk. You shared stories with Kale under the dim light of the shattered moon. Alara constantly worked on her data slate, refining the design for what we started to call the Anvil, the weapon that would break the Gilded. Your second stop was a fortress built around a geothermal vent. These people were different. They were fighters. They raided Gilded supply convoys. Their leader was a man named Jax, a brute with scars on his face and fire in his belly. He laughed at your story. He said a magic frequency was a child's fairy tale. He said the only way to fight was with lasers and steel. He showed you his arsenal, a pathetic collection of scavenged Gilded rifles. He was planning to die fighting. He saw it as a noble end. You saw it as a waste. You knew words were not enough. You needed to give them a demonstration. Alara had an idea. She modified a small Gilded patrol drone we had disabled. She calibrated it to emit a tiny, localized version of the counter-frequency. It was a risk. Using Gilded tech could draw a patrol down on us. But it was a risk you had to take. You challenged Jax. You told him you could disable his best drone without firing a single shot. He laughed and accepted. He saw it as a good joke. His people gathered to watch the show. They expected to see you fail. Alara activated your device. Jax launched his drone. For a moment, it flew perfectly. Then, your pulse hit it. The drone spasmed in midair. It tumbled from the sky and crashed to the ground. Lifeless. Not damaged. Just switched off. A silence fell over the crowd. Jack stared at the fallen drone. He walked over and picked it up. He inspected it. There was not a scratch on it. He looked at you. The laughter was gone from his eyes. It was replaced with something else. A dangerous glimmer of belief. That day, you gained your first ally. It was not a grand army. It was a band of hardened fighters with a new weapon, a new purpose. The first stone had been thrown. The first spark of a great fire had been lit. The weight of their new hope rested squarely on your shoulders. You were no longer just a scavenger. You were becoming a symbol. And that was far more dangerous.